Throughout the civil rights movement, there were two driving forces striving to bring about change. Grassroots activists were the everyday people from a wide range of backgrounds, ages, and ethnicities that rose up to defend civil rights in the manner they saw fit. For some, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., these tactics involved peaceful forms of protest. Others grew tired of the violence shown towards them and resorted to less specific methods. The second key players during this movement were the elected politicians. They were responsible for listening to their constituents and responding to the demand for progression. While it is true the grassroots activists were dependent on the politicians to pass and execute legislation, they were ultimately the ones who served as the true heart and motivation fueling this movement. Students, farmers, doctors, artisans, all of these are examples of the types of people who came together as grassroots activists. Cesar Chavez came to be a predominant leader in the fight for better rights for migrant workers. In his 1968 document, The Mexican American in the Church, Chavez detailed the events of a strike called in Delano in which 30 of the strikers were arrested and 11 ministers of the migrant ministry willingly went to jail with them. This is one of the countless acts of solidarity that exemplifies the dedication and devotion the people of this country had for making a difference. To further emphasize this point, Chavez stated, "We ask the Church to sacrifice with the people for social change, for justice, and for love of brother. Change would not come on its own, so he, and others like him, made the choice to ask for it." In some instances, these civil rights activists did not limit themselves to fighting for one minority group, but for the rights of many. Such was the case with Malcolm X, who stood for both African American and Muslim rights. Sourced from History Matters, the transcript entitled, "And This Happened in Los Angeles," cites Malcolm X's claim, "When the police got to the mosque, they drew up with their guns drawn and shooting. He besieged federal authorities to look into this matter because the local media reported both sides of the confrontation were armed when only the police were." Again, this call shows a grassroots activist drawing attention to an important issue for the government to address. After listening to the voices of Cesar Chavez, Malcolm X, and many others, politicians were able to direct their efforts accordingly. However, politicians did not always have the power to carry out the change desired. This can be seen in the case of African American women in the workforce. Despite the passing of the Equal Pay Act of 1963 and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, African American women suffered greatly economically. From History Matters, in the bottom of the economic totem pole, Dr. Polly Morey stated this was because of their dual victimization by race and sex-based discrimination. The laws and legislation were in place to offer certain protections, but without the means to ensure every employer abided by them, discrimination prevailed. Another instance of the shortcomings of politicians would be when 3 civil rights activists, Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Schwerner, went missing in Mississippi in June of 1964. Pulled from a recording at the UVA Miller Center, President Lyndon B. Johnson asked Administrator Lee White, "What do you think happened? Do you think they got killed?" White reported that it could be nothing more than a disappearance. Despite President Johnson's persistence in this investigation, the bodies of these individuals were found later that summer on August 4th. His intentions were not enough to see the boys rescued in the end, especially since local authorities were reluctant to see this as a potential murder case. There is no denying the pivotal role politicians have when it comes to social change. They are the ones who construct the laws for this country. Unfortunately, laws are not always enough. Those who wish to find a loophole or to turn a blind eye will do so, and our elected officials cannot be there to enforce their legislation upon every single individual. Therefore, it is up to the people to speak up when they see injustice. Grassroots activists were more responsible for reform because they were the ones willing to stand up, to inspire others, and to refuse to give in until they saw results beyond signed pieces of paper.